A few years back, the Prime Minister of Canada came down to the Toronto waterfront to announce an unprecedented experiment. An urban subsidiary of Google was going to design an entire neighborhood built, in its own words, from the internet up. It promised heated sidewalks, driverless taxis, and traffic lights that learn from the flow. And underneath all of it, sensors. Thousands of sensors recording data on every person crossing the street. That neighborhood was never built, and its failure matters more than many successes. Because it exposes the question this video wants to hold until the very end. When the programs that run a city are owned by a private company, who actually governs that city? The city hall that signs the contract, or the vendor that writes the code? To answer that, we first need to understand the mechanism, because the smart city model almost always works the same way. A local government buys a platform from a technology vendor that promises efficiency, traffic management, irrigation, street lighting, public safety. The company installs the sensors, runs the servers, and designs the algorithms that turn data into decisions. On paper, it is a purchase of services. In practice, it hides a transfer of power. Urban data starts flowing through private infrastructure. The criteria that prioritize one avenue or one neighborhood are protected as trade secrets. And switching vendors becomes so expensive and so complex that the city ends up trapped inside the system. Specialists call this vendor lock-in. The public client can no longer walk away. The effects show up later, once there is no way back. Decisions that used to be debated in a council chamber are now executed inside a black box. Which street gets patrolled more? Which light turns green first? Which neighborhood gets priority maintenance? Nobody votes on those criteria, somebody programs them in a distant office. And when a councillor asks to audit the system, the usual answer is that the code is protected by intellectual property. This is called algorithmic opacity, and it turns urban politics into an outsourced technical service. The data also shows that these large contracts concentrate the market in a handful of global corporations. The city, which in theory belongs to everyone, starts running on rules almost nobody can read. Back to Toronto, because it is the most revealing case. Google's urban subsidiary was not content with installing technology. In its founding documents, it went as far as proposing to collect taxes, run public transit, and test its own forms of policing and local justice. Canadian tech executive Jim Balsillie described the project as a colonizing experiment in surveillance capitalism. Organized citizens responded with hearings, protests, and formal petitions. They were asking something very simple: who would own the data, and who would the system answer to? The company never offered a convincing answer and ended up abandoning the project without laying a single brick. Toronto proved two things at once: that the model can be stopped, and how exhausting it is to stop it. The second case is in South Korea. Songdo was built from scratch as the perfect smart city, wired, sensor-covered, showcased at international fairs as the definitive urban future. Today, many researchers describe it as a catalog city, technically flawless and socially lukewarm, with far less urban life than promised. Songdo works mainly as a commercial showroom for its own vendors. And here it connects with something we already covered on this channel: the indexes that rank smart cities. Those lists do not just measure, they also sell. They reward the cities that buy the most technology and pressure the rest to imitate them. The index acts as the catalog, the vendor supplies the product, and the outsourced city is the final result. So much for the facts. Now, the interpretation. As the research of Shoshana Zuboff argues, this model brings the logic of surveillance capitalism onto the street, extracting human behavior and turning it into business. Yevgeny Morozov's critique adds another layer: solutionism, the belief that every urban problem can be fixed by buying technology. This can be read as a mutation of neoliberal urbanism. Before, cities privatized water companies or bus lines. Now they outsource something deeper: the very capacity to decide. Whoever controls the platform controls the information, and whoever controls the information shapes the politics. The vendor does not need to win elections to govern a city. It only needs to sign the right contract and hope nobody rereads it. The counterargument deserves a fair hearing, because it carries real weight. No local government can develop on its own all the technology it needs, and pretending otherwise would be naive. Working with private companies is unavoidable and, when well designed, delivers tangible benefits: less wasted water, fewer traffic jams, faster services. The problem, these voices argue, is not outsourcing itself but the design of the contract. And some cities have taken note. Barcelona rewrote its procurement rules to demand sovereignty over data, open source software, and public auditing of algorithms. The technology comes in, but the democratic institution sets the rules. One can argue this is the decisive frontier, not choosing between technology yes or no, but deciding who keeps the keys. Let us return, then, to the opening question: who governs the city when the program belongs to a company? The honest answer is uncomfortable. Whoever writes the code and holds the data governs, unless public power forces itself to reclaim that capacity. A truly smart city is not the one that piles up sensors, but the one that keeps the public competence to understand, audit and correct its own systems. The opposite has an old name, even when it arrives wrapped in screens: delegating government. So the next time your city announces a big technology partnership, do not ask how many sensors it will install. Ask who will be able to switch them off.